Nobody clapped when a human walked into the council chamber. David Okonkwo had expected this. He had traveled 6 months across the black emptiness of space, carrying treaties and gifts and the hopes of 8 billion people. He knew the aliens did not want him here. He came anyway. The chamber was enormous. 47 species sent their representatives to this place called Terminus. They floated in gravity pods, stood on platforms, or hung from ceiling perches. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had no faces at all. All of them watched the human with the same expression. Fear. David walked to the speaking platform. His footsteps echoed in the silence. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and kind eyes. He had buried his wife during the first contact wars. He had seen enough death to last 10 lifetimes. Now he wanted peace. Honored members of the Galactic Council, he began. His voice was steady. I come before you not as a conqueror, not as a threat. I come as a messenger of hope. High Arbiter Dreln watched from his elevated seat. He was ancient, even by the long-lived standards of the Visathi species. His gray skin hung loose on his frame, and his 4 eyes never blinked. He had studied humans for decades. He knew what they really were, deathworlders. Earth was classified as a Class 12 deathworld. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent. The predators were everywhere. And somehow, impossibly, humans had not only survived there, they had conquered it. Then they had reached for the stars that, in 60 years, humans had spread across 20 worlds. Their population was growing. Their technology was advancing. And their history was written in blood. Dreln had watched the recordings. Human wars, human weapons, human cruelty toward their own kind. If they did this to each other, what would they do to the galaxy? David continued his speech. He spoke of Earth's terrible past. He did not hide from it. He talked about the wars, the genocides, the suffering. Then he talked about how humanity had changed, how they had learned, how they had built a united world from the ashes of their conflicts. We know what we were, David said. We also know what we can become. We offer you partnership, trade, cultural exchange, friendship. All we ask is the chance to prove ourselves. Some of the council members shifted in their seats. A few seemed moved by his words. The Relathi representative, a being called Finn, nodded slowly. Perhaps there was hope after all, but Drone saw something else. He saw a predator wearing the mask of peace. He saw a species that had evolved to kill, pretending to be harmless. And he knew what he had to do. After David finished, the council voted. Not on acceptance, on delay. They would deliberate further. David would remain on Terminus as a guest while they decided humanity's fate that IT was a polite prison sentence. David accepted it gracefully. He sent a message back to Earth through the quantum relay. Patience, he wrote. We knew this would take time. I remain hopeful. Captain Yuki Tanaka received the message aboard the ESS Horizon, the diplomatic vessel waiting in orbit. She was young for a starship commander, barely 40, with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She did not share David's optimism. They're stalling, she told her security officer, Pavel Orlov. Something is wrong. Pavel nodded. He had felt it too. The way the station guards looked at them. The way communications were being monitored. Should we warn the ambassador? He knows, Yuki said. He just believes in people more than I do. On the station below, David unpacked his belongings in the small quarters they had given him. He placed a photograph on his desk. His wife, smiling in the sunlight of their garden back on Earth. She had believed in peace too. She had died believing in it. I will finish what we started, he whispered to her image. In the shadows of the council chamber, Dreln met with those who shared his fears. Counselor Mira Solvek of the Hegemony faction. Admiral Corvus of the Visathi fleet. Others who understood the threat. The humans are patient now, Dreln said. But patience runs out. We have seen their history. We know what happens when they stop being patient. We must act before they grow too strong. What do you propose? Mira asked. That Dreln's 4 eyes gleamed in the darkness. We show the galaxy what happens to deathworld species who reach beyond their place. We make an example that will echo across 1,000 stars. And the diplomatic consequences? There will be none, Dreln said, because there will be no one left to complain. David Okonkwo, slept peacefully that night, dreaming of the day when humans and aliens would walk together as friends. He did not know that somewhere in the station, his death was already being planned. He had 3 months left to live, and Earth had no idea what was coming. 3 months changed nothing and everything. David Okonkwo had made friends among the smaller species. He shared meals with the Relathi. He exchanged stories with the Fenari traders. He even made a few council members laugh, something that had never happened before in that ancient chamber. But Counselor Finn could not laugh anymore. He had heard whispers in the dark corridors. He had seen secret meetings between Dreln and the hegemony faction. Something terrible was being planned, and the human had no idea. Finn found David in the observation deck, watching the stars. "Ambassador," Finn said quietly, "you must leave. Tonight." David turned. His eyes were tired but still kind. "Why?" "I do not know the details, but I know enough. They are planning something against you. Against all humans. Please, for your own safety, return to your ship." David was silent for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "If I run at the first sign of trouble, humanity will never be trusted. They will say we are cowards. Or worse, they will say we were guilty of something. No, I stay." Finn's strange face twisted with frustration. "You do not understand. These people do not want peace. They want you gone. Permanently. Then they will have to do it while I look them in the eyes," David said softly. "I will not abandon my mission. Not for fear. Not for anything." Finn left with a heavy heart. He had tried. 1 week later, Dreln announced a special session. Humanity's petition would finally be addressed. David allowed himself to feel hope. Perhaps his patience had worked. Perhaps they would finally accept humanity into the galactic community. He dressed in his formal uniform. He practiced his acceptance speech. He imagined calling Earth with the good news. He had no idea he was walking into a trap. The council chamber was full. Every species, every representative, every floating camera drone. This would be broadcast across the galaxy. David stood at the speaking platform, waiting for the proceedings to begin. Dreln rose from his seat. His voice echoed through the chamber. "The Council has investigated humanity's true intentions," Dreln announced. "We have discovered evidence of secret military buildup, hidden fleets, plans for expansion and conquest." David's blood went cold. "That is not true." "Silence," Dreln commanded. He waved his hand, and holographic images appeared. Communications, fleet movements, strategic documents. All fake, all fabricated, but they looked real enough. "The humans are not peaceful explorers," Dreln continued. "They are predators wearing masks. They come with smiles, but they carry knives behind their backs. The Council must protect itself." David tried to speak. He tried to explain. But every time he opened his mouth, he was shouted down. The other representatives had already been convinced. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was rejected. Permanently. And Earth was ordered to surrender all its colonial worlds immediately. "I will not transmit such an ultimatum," David said, his voice finally cutting through the noise. "It is based on lies, and I will not be part of this injustice." Dreln smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Then you leave us no choice. Guards, arrest the human spy." Armored soldiers moved toward David. He did not resist. He stood tall, even as they grabbed his arms. He looked directly at the cameras, knowing that Earth would eventually see this. "I am David Okonkwo," he said clearly, "ambassador of United Earth. I came here in peace. I believed in peace. What happens to me does not change that truth." Dreln gave the signal. They killed him there in front of everyone. A plasma bolt through the chest. Quick and brutal. David's body fell to the floor, smoke rising from the wound. His eyes, still open, stared at nothing. The council chamber was silent for 3 heartbeats. Then Dreln spoke to the cameras. "Let this be a warning to all deathworld species. The galaxy belongs to the civilized. The humans have been shown their place." Aboard the ESS Horizon, Captain Yuki Tanaka watched the broadcast in horror. Her hands shook. Her crew stood frozen around her. "All hands," she said, her voice cracking. "Emergency jump. Get us out of here. Now." The station's defense guns opened fire as the horizon accelerated. 3 shots hit the hull before they reached hyperspace. But they escaped. 2 weeks later, the transmission reached Earth. The United Nations Space Command watched in silence. 8 billion humans watched in silence. The world stopped breathing. Then Fleet Admiral Rosa Delgado spoke 2 words that would change the galaxy forever. Wake the sleepers. In hidden bases across human space, lights began to turn on. Engines that had been cold for decades started to warm. Ships that the galaxy did not know existed began to move. David Okonkwo had offered peace. Earth's reply would be something very different. Earth went dark. Every human ship returned home. Every colony stopped transmitting. Every station went silent. The quantum relays that connected humanity to the galaxy carried nothing but static. The Council celebrated. They had done it. They had scared the deathworlders into submission. Drelm was praised as a hero. The species that had worried about human expansion now slept peacefully. The threat was over. They were very, very wrong. Deep beneath Luna's surface, President Amara Diallo walked through corridors that officially did not exist. She was 58 years old, tall and strong, with the weight of a civilization on her shoulders. Behind her walked Fleet Admiral Rosa Delgado and General Henrik Strand. "How many?" Diallo asked. "4,200 ships," Strand answered. "Hidden in asteroid fields, gas giant atmospheres, the Oort cloud. Some have been waiting for 30 years. The sleeper fleet," Diallo whispered. "I read about it in classified briefings. I never believed it was this large." Delgado spoke. Her voice was ice. "After the first contact wars, we knew the galaxy would try again. We built publicly 200 ships, enough to defend our borders. But secretly, we built an armada, just in case." They entered a massive underground chamber. Holographic displays showed ship positions, fleet movements, and something else. "A weapon. Project Prometheus," Strand said. "Our last resort. Dr. Kenji Watanabe designed it. A device that destabilizes stars. Makes them go supernova." Diallo stared at the display. "You built a sun killer." "We built 12, Delgado corrected. "For emergencies only. We hoped we would never use them." Diallo closed her eyes. She thought of David Okonkwo. She had met him once, years ago. A kind man. A hopeful man. Now he was dead, murdered in front of the entire galaxy while trying to make peace. "Play the recording," she ordered. The hologram shifted. David Okonkwo appeared, standing in the council chamber. They watched his final moments. His speech about peace. His refusal to surrender. The plasma bolt that ended his life. Diallo's advisors stood in silence. Some wept. Some trembled with rage. "They killed our messenger," Diallo said quietly. "They fabricated evidence. They murdered an innocent man to send us a message. Now we must decide how to respond." General Strand stepped forward. "Madam President, I recommend a measured response. Strike their military installations. Demand justice through force. But spare the civilian populations." Admiral Delgado shook her head. "Measured response invites future attacks. They killed our ambassador because they thought we were weak. If we show any weakness now, they will try again. And next time, it won't be one man. It will be one of our colonies. Maybe Earth itself." "You're talking about genocide," Strand said. "I'm talking about survival," Delgado replied. Diallo turned to Captain Yuki Tanaka, who had been brought directly from the horizon. "Captain, you were there. You knew Ambassador Okonkwo. What would he want us to do?" Tanaka was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy. "He believed in peace. He died believing in it. But he also told me once that peace without strength is just waiting to be conquered. He wanted us to be better than our enemies. But he also wanted us to survive." Diallo nodded slowly. She turned back to the holographic display. The stars of the galaxy glittered like cold diamonds. "They called us deathworlders," she said. "They feared what we might become. They killed David to prevent it." She paused. "They should have feared what we already are." She looked at Delgado. "Wake the full fleet. Load the Prometheus devices. We jump in 3 weeks. And the target, every species that voted for David's death. Every world that celebrated his murder." Diallo's voice hardened. They wanted to send a message. Now, they will receive ours. The orders went out across human space. In the hidden places, the sleeper fleet came alive. Engines ignited. Weapons powered up. Crews who had trained for decades finally had their mission. Point 1 transmission was sent to the Council. No words, just an image of Earth, peaceful and blue against the darkness of space. And beneath it, a countdown to 72 hours. Drelln received the message in his private chambers. He stared at the image, confusion turning to understanding, then to cold, creeping terror. "What have we done?" he whispered. But it was far too late for regret. The humans were coming, and they were bringing the end of worlds. The first warning came from a border station. "Contact! Unknown vessels emerging from hyperspace." The operator's voice was calm, professional. Then the numbers started coming in, and his voice cracked. 50 ships. No, 100. 200. Updating. He never finished the count. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like a tide of steel and fire. 4,200 warships, ranging from nimble destroyers to massive dreadnoughts the size of cities. They filled the sensors of every station in range. They blocked out the stars. Admiral Rosa Delgado stood on the bridge of the UNSC Retribution, watching the tactical display. Her face showed no emotion. Her heart, however, burned with cold fire. "All ships, maintain formation," she ordered. "Target priority, Terminus Station first. Then we split for the homeworlds." Across the fleet, weapons charged. Shields activated. Humans who had trained their whole lives for a war they hoped would never come now prepare to fight. High Arbiter Drelln received the sensor reports in the council chamber. His 4 eyes went wide. "Impossible," he breathed. "They only have 200 ships." "Our intelligence confirmed." "Your intelligence was wrong," Counselor Finn said quietly. "They hid the truth from you, just as you hid your intentions from them." Drelln grabbed a communication device. His hands were shaking. "This is High Arbiter Drelln of the Galactic Council. Human vessels, we demand you identify your intentions." "We can negotiate," Silence answered him, but he tried again. "We are willing to discuss terms. The execution of your ambassador was perhaps hasty. Reparations can be still nothing." "Please," Drelln said, his voice breaking. "Respond." The only response was the first volley of missiles. The Battle of Terminus lasted 4 hours. The Council fleet was larger in numbers, but had never faced an enemy like this. Humans fought with cold precision and absolute coordination. Their ships moved as one, covering each other, supporting each other, dying for each other without hesitation. Counselor Finn watched from a civilian transport as the station's defenses crumbled. Massive human vessels punched through the defensive lines. Smaller ships swarmed like angry insects, destroying anything that resisted. And then the boarding parties arrived. Human Marines in powered armor cut through the station's hull. They moved through corridors like ghosts of vengeance. Council security forces, who had never faced real combat, broke and ran. But the humans were not there to conquer. They were looking for something. Captain Yuki Tanaka led the primary assault team. She had traded her captain's uniform for battle armor. Her face was hidden behind a helmet, but her voice was clear through the communication system. "Sweep every level. Find him." They found David Okonkwo's body in a storage room. The council had kept it as a trophy. They had displayed it to visiting diplomats as proof of their power over the deathworlders. Now human soldiers stood in silence around their fallen ambassador, but a young Marine named Kofi removed his helmet. Tears ran down his face. "Sir," he whispered to the body, "we're taking you home." Gently, as if handling a sleeping child, he lifted David Okonkwo and carried him toward the extraction point. Once the body was secured aboard the Retribution, Admiral Delgado gave the order: destroy the station. Terminus, which had stood for 3,000 years as the center of galactic civilization, vanished in nuclear fire. The fleet split into 3 groups. Each targeted the homeworld of a species that had voted for David's death. The Visathi, the Hegemony, the Corvari, Captain Tanaka's ship, now renamed the ESS Vengeance, led the assault on the Visathi homeworld. Drelln had already fled there. Hoping to organize a defense, he found only chaos. Refugee ships filled with terrified civilians clogged the space lanes. Military vessels scrambled without coordination. Planetary defenses activated too late. Drone broadcast one final plea. His voice was raw with desperation. I surrender. I offer myself. Take me, but spare my people. They did nothing wrong. It was my decision. Mine alone. Admiral Delgado's response finally came. Cold. Final. Ambassador Okonkwo offered you friendship. You killed him for it. Earth's only reply is total annihilation. The Prometheus device activated .it was beautiful in a terrible way. The Vasathi sun began to pulse, then swell, then turn colors that no star should turn. Scientists across the galaxy would study the recordings for centuries, try to understand how the humans had done it. Drelln watched from his ship as his homeworld's sun began to die. 4 billion Vasathi looked up at their sky and saw the end coming. What have we done? Drelln whispered again. Then the star exploded, and 4 billion voices went silent forever. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. 3 suns had died. 3 homeworlds had been erased from existence. Billions of lives, gone in flashes of stellar fire. And the human fleet was still moving, still hunting, still destroying. Species that had laughed at the Council's decision now huddled in fear. Those who had celebrated David Okonkwo's death now prayed to whatever gods they believed in. The deathworlders had awakened, and they were everything the Council had feared. Admiral Rosa Delgado stood alone in her quarters, staring at the viewport. Behind her, the wreckage of another enemy fleet drifted in the void. Ahead, 2 more homeworlds waited for judgment. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were dry. But somewhere deep inside, something was breaking. Admiral, her communications officer called. Incoming transmission from Counselor Finn. He's requesting to speak with you directly. Put him through. Finn's image appeared. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago. Exhausted. Defeated. Admiral Delgado, he said, I beg you to stop. Why should I? Because you made your point. The Council is destroyed. The species that voted for Ambassador Okonkwo's death have paid the price. The others, the ones who abstained, the ones who tried to help, they did nothing wrong. They don't deserve extinction. Delgado was silent. I tried to warn your ambassador, Finn continued. I told him to leave. He refused because he believed in peace. Is this what he would have wanted? Would David Okonkwo look at burning worlds and dead children and call this justice? The words hit harder than Delgado expected. She thought of David's photograph, the one Captain Tanaka had recovered from his quarters. His kind eyes, his gentle smile. What do you want? She asked. Unconditional surrender. Every surviving Council species. We will submit to human authority. We will pay reparations. We will do whatever you demand. Just please stop killing us. Delgado closed the channel without answering. On Earth, President Amara Diallo watched the war through encrypted reports. She saw the casualty figures, the death tolls, the refugee fleets fleeing destroyed worlds. Dr. Kenji Watanabe, the creator of the Prometheus weapons, sent her a personal message. Madam President, I built those devices to protect humanity, not to commit genocide. We've proven our strength. We've avenged Ambassador Okonkwo. But every additional use of Prometheus doesn't make us safer. It just makes us monsters. I'm begging you, order the fleet to stop. Diallo read the message 3 times. Then she watched the footage from the Vasathi homeworld. The sun dying, the planet burning, millions of voices screaming as fire consumed everything. She thought of David Okonkwo. His speech about humanity's dark past. His hope that they had learned from it. His belief that they could be better. Had they learned anything at all? Captain Yuki Tanaka appeared on Diallo's screen. She was still in her battle armor, still commanding the vengeance. Captain, Diallo said, you knew Ambassador Okonkwo better than anyone in the fleet. Tell me honestly, what would he say about what we've done? Tanaka hesitated. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. He would be horrified. He would understand why we did it, but he would be horrified. He believed that humanity's greatest strength wasn't our weapons or our anger. It was our ability to choose something better. And if we stop now, if we show mercy, Then we prove that we're not just deathworlders. We prove that we can be more than our worst instincts. Tanaka paused. The council killed him because they feared what we might become. If we destroy everything, we become exactly what they feared. Diallo nodded slowly. She opened a priority channel to Admiral Delgado. Admiral, this is President Diallo. Stand down the fleet. No more Prometheus deployments. The war is over. Delgado's voice came back hard and cold. Madam President, with respect, if we show weakness now, this isn't weakness, Diallo interrupted. This is choice. We have proven that we can destroy them. Now we prove that we can stop, that we're not mindless killers, that David Okonkwo's belief in humanity wasn't misplaced. A long silence. Then Delgado replied, her voice softer. Understood, Madam President. Fleet standing down. The order went out across human space. 4,000 ships slowed their advance. Weapons power down. The killing stopped. Diallo recorded a message for the galaxy. Her face was tired but determined. To all species of the former Galactic Council, you killed our messenger of peace. You celebrated his death. And you learned what humanity is capable of when we are pushed too far. She paused. We could continue. We could burn every world that stood against us. But we choose to stop. Not because we are weak. Not because we are afraid. Because we are more than just deathworlders. We are humans. And we remember how to be merciful. This war ends now. Remember what happened here. Remember what we could have done and what we chose not to do. And never, ever give us a reason to make a different choice. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, survivors wept with relief, and somewhere, perhaps, David Okonkwo smiled. 5 years changed the galaxy. Where the old council chamber once stood, a new structure rose from the ashes of Terminus. It was called the Memorial Assembly, and at its heart stood a statue of a man with kind eyes and an extended hand, David Okonkwo, ambassador of Earth, the last victim of the old order, and the first symbol of the new one. Sarah Okonkwo touched the cold metal of her father's statue. She was 28 now, with his same gentle features and quiet strength. Today was the anniversary of his death. Today, the galaxy would remember. Ships from 30 species filled the space around the station. Former enemies, former allies, all of them here to honor a man they had killed and to acknowledge the consequences of that killing. Admiral Yuki Tanaka watched from the observation deck. Her hair had gone gray at the temples. Her eyes carried the weight of everything she had seen. The Vengeance had been decommissioned after the war, but Tanaka still served. Now, she commanded the peacekeeping fleet that patrolled former council space. Strange, isn't it? Counselor Finn said, joining her at the window. He was older too, slower, but he had survived. More importantly, he had been instrumental in building the peace. 5 years ago, your ships came to destroy us. Now, they protect us. Not strange, Tanaka replied. Necessary. Someone has to make sure this never happens again. Finn nodded. My people call the human response the reckoning. We teach in our schools. Every child learns what happened when you pushed humans too far. Good. Fear isn't the foundation I would have chosen for peace. But it works. In the assembly hall, Ambassador Pavel Orlov addressed the gathered representatives. He was David Okonkwo's successor, a young man who had served as security officer aboard the Horizon, who had survived the escape from Terminus, who had dedicated his life to finishing what David had started. He carried a photograph in his pocket. David Okonkwo, smiling in the sunlight. Pavel touched it before every speech. We gather today to remember Ambassador David Okonkwo, Pavel said, a man who believed that humanity and the galaxy could find common ground. A man who died for that belief. He paused, looking at the assembly. Species that had voted for David's death sat beside species that had tried to save him. Refugees from the destroyed worlds sat beside the humans who had destroyed them. It was uncomfortable. It was necessary. Some of you still hate us, Pavel continued. Some of you lost everything because of what we did. We understand your anger. We carry our own grief. But we cannot change the past. We can only choose what comes next. On Earth, retired President Amara Diallo watched the ceremony from her home. A journalist sat across from her, recording her final interview. "Do you regret the reckoning?" the journalist asked. Diallo was quiet for a long time. "I regret that it was necessary," she finally said. "I regret that David Okonkwo had to die. I regret every civilian who burned when we killed their sons. But I do not regret protecting my people. I do not regret showing the galaxy that humans will not be murdered without consequence. And stopping the campaign? Some say you showed weakness. Some say that stopping took more strength than continuing." Diallo smiled sadly. David Okonkwo believed that humanity's greatest power was our ability to choose. Destruction is easy. Anyone can destroy. The real test is knowing when to stop. Back at the Memorial Assembly, Sarah Okonkwo took the stage. The hall fell silent. Everyone knew who she was. Everyone knew the weight of her name. "My father was not a warrior," she began. "He was a teacher, a diplomat, a man who believed in conversation, not conflict. When he came to this place, he offered friendship. He was answered with murder." Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. What followed was terrible. Worlds burned. Billions died. My father's death became the excuse for horrors that would have broken his heart. She paused. But humanity did something that surprised the galaxy. We stopped. We chose mercy when we had every reason to choose extinction. She looked at the assembly, at the mixed species, at the former enemies learning to live together. That choice is my father's true legacy. Not the war, not the reckoning. The moment when humanity proved that we are more than deathworlders, more than killers. We're people who can grow, people who can forgive, people who can build something better from the ashes of tragedy. She stepped back from the podium and placed her hand on the statue's extended palm. "I forgive you," she whispered. "I forgive all of you." That's what he would have wanted. Outside the station, a young alien child watched the ceremony through a viewport. She tugged on her parents' arm. "Why did the humans stop?" she asked. "They could have killed everyone." Her parent looked at the stars, stars that once burned with human vengeance, but now shone peacefully over a healing galaxy. "Because they're not like us," her parent answered. "They know when enough is enough." The child looked at the statue of David Okonkwo, his hand reaching out in eternal greeting. "I want to be like him when I grow up," she said. Her parent smiled. "Then be kind," they said. "Be brave. And always choose peace when you can." The stars continued to shine, and the galaxy slowly began to heal.